At the beginning of the story, we see Nahejo. She returns home, very tired. As she opens the door to her room, she sees a sight that takes her breath away. In the dim light of the room, her husband is seen getting intimate with another woman. Nahejo remains completely still for a moment. Her eyes widen, as if all the light has vanished from them in an instant. Her hands begin to tremble, her legs give way. Her heartbeat becomes so fast that she can hear it in her ears. But then, suddenly, she jerks her eyes open. She realizes it was all just a dream. Her eyes suddenly open. In an instant, the dream shatters and reality dawns. Nahejo is at her part-time job. The fatigue of break time must have weighed heavily on her eyelids when she inadvertently closed her eyes and had that strange, piercing dream. She takes a deep breath, as if reassuring herself that she's still in that same small store, not in a crumbling relationship. But my friends, here's a little secret. What she dreamed is going to come true one day, and in a way that will completely change Nahejo's life. She's completely unaware of this. She just straightens her apron and gets up to return to her shift. Just then, her boss stands before her. The same serious, yet somehow gentle expression on his face. He says, "Come in, Nahejo. I need to give you something." Nahejo, a little surprised, follows him into the office. The boss opens his desk drawer and takes out a white envelope, handing it to her. "Here's this month's advance." Nahejo's fingers tremble slightly as she touches the envelope. She asks softly, "Advance?" The boss nods. "Yes, the salary is 1.5 million won." The boss says in a slightly irritated tone, "I had to go to the bank myself because you didn't want an online transfer. But you're hard-working, and I don't want to lose you, so it's okay." There's anger and slight annoyance in his voice. He then asks, "Do you still need the money?" Nahejo says calmly,
The interest rate is too high. I can't repay the loan.
The boss replies, "But your husband has started a job." Nahejo says softly, "It's just an apprenticeship. The salary is very low. Almost nothing." With that, she gets back to work. The boss stands there, watching her, perplexed. A while later, while working in the shop, Nahejo sees a happy couple. Their smiles, their ease, everything touches her. She thinks, people in love always seem happy. Be it their first love or their second, there's a glow on their faces. Perhaps youth is what gives them the courage to love again, even when their hearts are broken. Then a question slowly arises in her mind. Then Nahejo curses herself, thinking, "Is this why the love of my life is gone? Because I'm no longer young." A moment later, she composes herself and says to herself, "Look, Nahejo, you're very beautiful. This isn't just my personal opinion. It's the truth. Don't hold such things in your heart. When the right time comes, everything will be fine." Just then, her colleague comes in briskly and says a little angrily, "Look, why is everyone calling me auntie? Do I look like an aunt?" Nahejo laughs lightly and says, "I'm married, that's fine with me." But immediately, she looks at her colleague a little sternly and says, "You look so beautiful even at 33. Even if you wear the same clothes you wear here every day, you still look so fresh, so beautiful every day. So you should just keep quiet." Her colleague is a little embarrassed, a little happy to hear this. Nahejo smiles slightly, picks up her bag, and leaves for home. There's a tired look on her face. As soon as Nahejo leaves the shop, the faint smile on her face instantly vanishes. Sadness creeps into her eyes. She thinks to herself, "People say I'm beautiful. But how do they know how difficult life can be for someone? Only I know that. And why am I thinking this?" Nahejo has now reached her home. Small, quiet, but even that peace carries a heaviness. Just there, her husband Mikol appears. He's sitting in front of the TV, a look of absurd irritation etched on his face. As soon as Nahejo opens the door and comes in, Mikole wastes no time in taunting her. He says, Why do you always wear such boring clothes? Why don't you wear a little makeup like other women? Najo's voice is very low, as if she herself is afraid that her words might sound harsh. She says, "When I can't even afford the household expenses, how can I even get makeup done?" This irritates Michole even more. Her words become even harsher, as if Najo is the reason for her failure in every little thing. Najo remains silent. But a tired thought arises in her mind. Do you even know how much makeup costs? I'm afraid to even spend 1,001. Her face is expressionless. Oh my God. Even after working so hard, she can't even spend Rs 600. Najo, heartbroken, thinks, does love really fade with time? Have I forgotten the meaning of love? Or are you the reason I feel this way? She's thinking all this about her husband. And to be honest, Najo is right. She's working so hard, and yet her husband taunts her. It's really sad. The scene changes. Najo is back at her part-time job. Her co-worker asks, surprised, "You work at the butch shop on Sundays, then as a receptionist at a motel, and now here at the flower shop. Are you a machine?" Najo responds emotionlessly. "Quickly put on an apron. We have to open the shop, okay?" She returns to work, but there's a clear sadness on her face, a silent pain she doesn't share with anyone. She thinks, "I've always worked. I've never taken a vacation in my entire life. I did once, and that was when I was very sick. I never asked my parents for help. I tried my best to save my marriage. And what did I get in return?" As these thoughts deepen, the story takes us into flashbacks where Nazo's true pain, her past. There was a time when Michelle took out a huge loan in her name without telling her. Yes, in her own name, but Najo had to suffer. She simply apologized on her knees for that mistake. Such a huge loan, and just a sorry. But Najo loved her deeply, so much so that she forgave her. And now, to pay off that same loan, she's working 3 jobs. It's enough to think, why have we started hating Michelle now? Najo is lost in these thoughts when a mysterious handsome man enters the flower shop. Upon seeing him, her colleague excitedly exclaims, "Look, Rose, here he is." Najo is a little confused. "Rose? Who is he?" His colleague explains, "He comes in every day at this time. He buys food. I don't know his name, so we named him Rose Cow." The colleague moves to take his order, but the man is staring at the flower section filled with cows, as if lost in another world. Then suddenly, he walks right up to Najo, stands in front of her, and says in a calm, deep voice, "I want to order. Please take my order." Najo hesitates a bit. A strange feeling overtakes her. But she speaks. "Rose?" A faint smile appears on the man's lips. He says softly, "Yes, that's what makes you special." Najo's mind is confused. She wonders, what's wrong with him? But before he can say anything else, the man is about to turn and say something like, "Friends, this chapter ends here. Please comment to see the next chapter so we can try to make this video even better for you." Najo often thinks there are 2 kinds of people in the world. 1. Those around whom the whole world revolves, as if they were the main characters in a movie. And the other, those who are simply extras standing in the background, whose presence or absence doesn't make much difference to anyone's story. If she thinks about herself, she always feels she falls into the latter category. But this man sitting in front of her definitely seems to belong to the former. Perhaps that's why his impact was so profound. Even Najo herself couldn't understand. The scene changes. Her co-worker happily approaches her and says with a smile, "Did you notice he only takes orders from you? I think he likes you. And look, he only comes here when you're at work." But Najo immediately cuts her off. In a calm, almost cold voice, she says, "This is the first time I've seen him." Hearing this, her co-worker is stunned. "Is this the first time you've seen him today? He's been coming here for months. But your schedule is so tight that you're lost in yourself.
He continues, I still wonder if he really likes you or is interested in you. But Naijo says in a slightly irritated tone, Don't talk nonsense. Her coworker laughs and teases her again. He was just looking at you. Naijo says sadly, without any joke. He must be crazy to be hitting on an old woman like me. The coworker laughs and says, Don't you know, dating mature women is a trend these days. And who knows, maybe he's really serious about you. Anyway, you're very beautiful. Hearing this, a slight weariness appears in Naijo's eyes. She says softly, If I'm beautiful, it means all the beautiful people in this world are dead. Her colleague pauses. After a while, he says in a soft voice, You really are beautiful. Don't people say that to you? Naizu is lost in deep thought. The only thought that keeps lingering in her mind is that the man who would truly call her beautiful would never say that. And what's the point of hearing it from someone else? The colleague then says, I think you two would look good together. Why don't you give him a try? Naizu immediately replies, I have a man. The colleague is shocked. Oh, I thought you were single. So, how is your boyfriend? He loves you, doesn't he? He really loves you, doesn't he? The scene slowly shifts. We now see Naizu's house. When Neho arrives home, just then, the door slams open. Neho's husband, Michel, comes in angrily. Irritation is clearly visible on his face. Without looking at her, he says, Put some hot water on me. I need to take a bath. As he says this, he throws his dirty clothes all over the room. Neho silently bows her head and begins picking them up. There's a look of tiredness on her face and a long silence in her heart. Michel returns from the shower. He sees Neho sleeping. He stares at her for a while, then comes over and attempts to get closer to her. But as he touches her, a sudden thought comes to his mind. She doesn't even work out. Yet, how does her figure remain so perfect? Why does she feel so soft? I can't remember anything else. But why isn't she reacting? He asks softly, Are you sleeping? Naizu replies softly, No. Michel's face immediately tenses. He says irritably, Then why aren't you reacting? Why are you lying there like a doll? You don't know? A wife's job is to please her husband. Naizu says, almost in a whisper, I'm a little tired. This makes Michel even angrier. His tone becomes harsher. He says, It's not just you being tired. Stop what you're doing. I don't want to do all this. And then he turns away and goes back to sleep. Tears flow silently from Naijo's eyes. She falls asleep while crying. The next morning. The next scene is in the morning. Naijo wakes up without her alarm. The clock strikes 6. She gathers herself and goes to the kitchen to prepare dinner for Michel. Not even time for a bath, not even a sip of water, because Michel has a habit of demanding a new dish every morning. He always eats hot food. Naijo walks very carefully, very slowly, because Michel can't stand even the slightest noise early in the morning. She cooks, slowly puts away the dishes, finishing her kitchen chores with bated breath. And through it all, she doesn't cook anything for herself. With no time left, she leaves for her part-time job on an empty stomach. Our Naijo's life is very difficult. So difficult that she can't even cook for herself. Waking up early every morning to cook for others, fulfilling the needs of others, and leaving for work on an empty stomach has become a habit for her. The scene changes. We are now at her part-time job. A small flower shop, where a faint floral fragrance lingers. The same strange man, whose eyes look at Naijo differently, is standing in front of her again. Naijo asks in a low but respectful voice, Sir, do you want a bouquet of 10 roses again? The man replies with a slight smile, Yes. Naijo begins to write the receipt, but at that very moment, a loud noise comes from her stomach. Her face fills with embarrassment. She lowers her gaze. She thinks, maybe he didn't hear the voice, and she secretly prays that's the case. But the man leaves the shop for a while without saying anything. Naijo watches him go. There's no hurry in his movements, but something seems unspoken. A little while later, he returns. He takes his order and walks out without a word. Naizu watches him go, and then her eyes fall on the counter. He's left something behind. She goes over and looks, and finds a sandwich there. Just one sandwich that he had quietly left behind. Naizu immediately picks it up and runs after him. She calls out, "Listen, listen, you left this here." The man stops. He remains silent for a moment. Then, looking into her eyes, he says softly, "Actually, this is a gift for you." Naizu is startled. She says in a panic, "No, no, I can't take this." The man asks with a slight smile, "Are you refusing because you have nothing to drink?" Then he extends his coffee cup to her and says, "I've just taken a sip of this. And don't worry. It's not poisonous. You can drink it." Nijo looks at the cup in his hand, then the sandwich, then his eyes, and only one word comes to mind, "Yes." And at this moment, this chapter ends. A light conversation begins between Najo and her coworker. Sitting in the break area, Najo's coworker smiles and says, "I'm telling you, that boy likes you. Look, he deliberately left sandwiches here for you and even got you coffee. If you don't say he likes you, then who else will you say he likes you?" Najo slowly lowers her gaze, then gets up and examines her face in the small mirror in front of her. In the mirror, she sees her tired eyes, faded skin, and slight wrinkles. She sighs sadly and thinks, "I look so old. My skin isn't the same anymore. My eyes look lifeless. How could he be interested in me? Maybe he just felt pity for me because he saw me hungry, so he gave me the sandwich. If I were in his place, I would probably do the same." Another look of weariness creeps across Najo's face. She pauses for a moment and thinks again. But if he really likes me, I'll have to draw the line now, so there won't be any problems later. Her hands tremble with the slight cold, as if trying to convince herself that she must control her heart. Some time passes. Both are busy with their work, but Kovarkar's mind is still stuck on the same topic. She comes back to Najo and, with a soft laugh, asks, "What will you do about that boy now? If he really likes you, why don't you leave your boyfriend and make him your boyfriend?" Upon hearing this, Najo's face suddenly hardens. She replies with a slight annoyance, "He's not my boyfriend. He's my husband." Kovarkar's face changes instantly. Her smile disappears, and the atmosphere becomes completely awkward. She says hurriedly, "Oh, sorry. I didn't know you were married. I thought you were still in a relationship. Why don't you explain things properly, Najo?" As soon as she finishes speaking, the scene suddenly goes into a flashback. Flashback. Mikol and Naheijo. Mikol stands in the yellow glow of the house lights, filled with anger. There's irritation on his face, and a harshness in his voice. "Don't tell everyone we're married. We divorced anyway because of the loan. So, don't tell people. What will people say about me? That I'm still living with you even after the divorce?" Nicole stands before her eyes slightly moist, but her voice completely calm. As if she's heard all this countless times before. Mikol's words leave a piercing chill in the air. And the flashback slowly fades. Scene in Minkol's office. Minkol is working in his office. A new girl passes by and offers him coffee and looks at him with a slight smile. Minkol returns the smile as if lost in another world. A little while later, it's break time. Minchol is standing outside smoking a cigarette with his colleagues. Smoke wafts through the air, and the atmosphere of conversation suddenly lightens. One of his colleagues asks him, "That new girl keeps looking at you. Have you noticed? And yes, you're 33 now, right? You should get married. You're still single, aren't you?" With a deep, almost dark smile, Minchol says without hesitation, "Yes, I am single." The colleague immediately says, "So, why don't you try it on her?" Taking a puff of his cigarette, Michol confidently says, Yes, why not? The scene cuts here. Scene changes evening. Nicole is sitting on the couch watching TV in the evening. The room is dimly lit, and the atmosphere feels strangely distant. Najo gently sits down beside him and asks in a soft voice, "How's your work going?" Nicole, without taking his eyes off the TV, speaks with attitude. "Now you're thinking about me. By the way, my work is going badly. There's a lot of pressure, so don't ask about that." Najo says in a soft, almost broken voice, "If your salary comes in, we'll be able to repay the loan quickly, and then we'll get married soon, right?" Michol becomes irritated upon hearing this. His voice tightens. "Yes, we'll get married, right? Am I running away somewhere? Don't you know that when girls talk too much, boys run away?" Nahejo falls silent upon hearing this. A faint glint of pain appears deep within her eyes, unnoticed. Some time passes. The atmosphere calms down a bit. Mincho looks at Nahejo and suddenly says in a very soft, almost sweet voice, "Nahejo, I need some money. I want to buy a nice perfume." Nahejo looks at him awkwardly and softly asks, "But where do you use perfume?" Mincho, without thinking, immediately replies with an excuse ready. "All my coworkers wear perfume. I hate that I'm the only one leaving the office without any." Nahejo then softly asks, "Well, how much will it cost?" Mincho speaks in a casual tone, $1,200. Nahejo is shocked and whispers, "Why so expensive?" Mincho, irritated by this, says, "I want branded. I won't buy it just anywhere. Leave it. If you don't want it, don't give it to me." He turns back to the TV as if Nahejo doesn't exist. Scene changes the next morning. The soft morning light falls on the bills scattered on the table. Nahejo sits, counting her monthly expenses. There's a look of weariness on her face, worry in her eyes, and a quiet fear in her heart. She thinks, "This month has already cost a lot. I had to buy a new suit for Minchol, then I had to buy him branded shoes. Everything's so expensive." Her heart grows heavier as she adds up the numbers on the paper. She finally takes a deep, tired breath and decides, this month she'll have to work more overtime. She's already working 3 jobs, and now she'll have to work overtime on that one too. Because she needs to give Minchol $12,000 so she can buy perfume and be happy. Man, this is a very toxic relationship. The girl who is herself falling apart is the one who's trying to take care of everyone else. But Najo quietly gets up, opens the cupboard, and takes out her emergency money and gently slips it into Michol's pocket. Her face is blank, as if she can't bear to face her own pain. Scene shift. A dark alley. Streetlights flicker in the dark, narrow alley. 2 boys are seen walking. One boy asks the other, "How did you manage to invite me to dinner today? And why do you want to eat at such a cheap place?" The other boy's voice becomes recognizable. It's him, Rose Guy. He says with a slight smile, "Well, I'm inviting the others too." But the glint in his eyes says something else. Now they enter the restaurant. A small, simple restaurant. It's crowded, noisy, and in a corner, Najo is working in a waiter's uniform. A slight tiredness on her face, but still trying her best to maintain a smile. Just then, Rose Guy and her group enter the restaurant. A girl in the group stands in front. Nahejo asks in a professional tone, "Okay, how many tables do you need?" And then her gaze lands squarely on Rose Guy. In that moment, time seems to stop for a second. Nahejo's breath catches. There's something in Rose Guy's eyes that she can't understand. But he's watching, very intently, very deeply. The scene freezes. Was he the one who ruined their relationship? Nasu was thinking this when a voice came from behind her. The voice said a customer had arrived. She immediately turned, greeted him, and asked how many people were there. Just then, her gaze shifted and she stopped. She saw him. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized him. She realized it was the Rose Boy. As the Rose Boy passed by with his friends, The waitress ordered a table for 4. The girl replied, "Yes, they're a group of 4. Naso apologized lightly and explained that she was just a little lost. Then she gestured for them to sit down. While cooking, she remembered her friend's words that the rose boy might like her. She figured she wasn't interested in him. She had never even considered it, nor had she ever felt the need for such attention. Still, she felt embarrassed that the boy had overheard their conversation. The strange thing is that she finds it difficult to even look at him now. She thinks the girl sitting next to her must be his girlfriend because they look good together. She thinks he always brings her bouquets. Working with Kauvarkar, Neho never knows when a topic will arise. She tries to control herself. Just then, Haji calls out to the rose boy and asks what he's looking at, because he's been staring at one thing for so long. The boy sitting next to her says, "Haji, you know, the rose boys aren't interested in you at all. They just spend quality time with you. And that's what he wants to do with you. That's why he's kept you with him. He understands that whether he looks away or nods, you just do your work, eat your food, and be nice. Why do you keep staring at the rose boy's face?" Meanwhile, Rose Boy massages her foot and reminds her that Donghuak is cooking meat. Donghuak agrees, says everything will be fine, and tells her to just focus on the food. Hiji then asks Rose Boy why he's staring at the woman and if they know each other. Rose Boy admits with a slight smile that he does. This surprises Hiji. She was a little suspicious, but wasn't sure if he really knew her. The scene changes and Neju arrives home. She's doing housework when she sees Mikul's torn t-shirt. She thinks he'll be angry, and she just bought it a while ago. Throwing it away feels wrong to her, so she decides to sew it. Mikul, lying down, asks what Neju is doing instead of resting. Neju explains that she's sewing. Mikul eagerly takes the cloth and says it's useless. He then asks if she's really asking him to buy clothes right now. If so, she should forget it. Naju asks why she should throw it away. It's still wearable, but Mikul says that men don't like such bad behavior. He doesn't like torn underwear, and loose clothes make him feel even worse. He says it all makes him feel like an old man. Najo thinks and admits that every little thing reminds him of her. She can't understand what it was about their conversation that day that shook her so deeply. She knows the whole thing was a misunderstanding, yet the embarrassing and humiliating memories keep coming back to her. She tries to forget them, but they keep coming back. Najo asks Mikul to return the clothes. Mikul sighs and says that no matter what he says, Nahu always looks sad. He pulls her aside and says that she has no charm, no mood, and no understanding of being a woman. Yet, despite all this, he still wants to be with her. He says that Nahu is the only one for him. Nahu remains silent and nods slightly. The cold winter wind beats against the walls of their semi-basement apartment, stinging her skin. Tucked away in a cramped and dilapidated house, their life is bland and full of misfortune. Najo doesn't like it, but she endures it for him. The next day, Najo is packing food. The weather report indicates rain is expected in the afternoon and could continue until late at night. Nahu thinks it might rain until evening, so she decides to take an umbrella. She looks to see which umbrellas are in good condition. One is broken and one is intact. She thinks the worn-out umbrella might still work, and she should give the good one to Michelle. The scene changes to the office. Michelle calls Ari and asks where she's going. She says she's going to get coffee. As she passes by, Michelle asks if the instant coffee is finished. Ari asks where the new pack is. Michelle says he saw it somewhere around here. As Ari tries to pick her up, she suddenly screams and jumps on Michelle. Shocked, Michelle asks what's wrong. Ari nervously replies that there are insects. Michelle breathes a sigh of relief and, with a slight smile, says she thought she had done something wrong. He asks if she's really that scared of insects. Ari explains that she's not just scared, but terrified. Ari moves closer to her, and Michelle finds it strangely endearing, He says he'll catch the insect. He asks where it is. But when he looks around, he finds nothing. Ari still insists that he was really scared. Mikul thinks Najo has never been afraid of insects, so a girl like Ari is refreshing. She feels like coming to work now has some meaning. The scene shifts to the shop. Najo's friend says someone is late today. Nahu asks who. Her friend tells her that he's Roseboy. She adds that at least his handsome face provides some relief in this demanding part-time job. Seeing her, Nahisu's friend announces her arrival. Nahu quickly goes behind to handle the flowers. Her friend asks why she's leaving so suddenly. As soon as Roseboy comes in, he sees Nahu leaving and heads towards the counter. Nahu's friend asks if she wants any specific flowers. Roseboy calmly says that he wants the same bouquet of roses. Nahu wonders how she made that decision without even looking around. As the morning rain begins to fall heavily, Nahu thinks it's a good thing she didn't encounter him today. But she knows she can't always avoid him. She thinks about the forecast of heavy rain and sees that it is indeed pouring heavily. She hopes Michelle will remember her umbrella. As she opens it, it creaks and breaks. She remembers that it seemed fine in the morning, but is now completely broken. The convenience store isn't far away, but not close enough to run out into the rain, and it will last until nightfall. She can't stay here long. Poverty secretly identifies people. If only she had a cheap umbrella, this problem wouldn't have happened. She wonders what to do now. She knows that if she calls Michelle, he will be upset, especially since he's already tired of settling into his new job. She decides to wait a little longer. Then suddenly, an umbrella appears over her. It's Roseboy. He asks where she's going. Nijo says she'll be fine and tells her that his house is a little far away, so she should go. But Roseboy stops her and says it's going to rain until morning, so why not share an umbrella?
There is no point in waiting for the rain to stop, as it will continue to rain till morning. So it would be better if we share the umbrella and I drop you home.
Don't worry, I'm fine. My house is just a short distance away. Please go ahead.
Understand what I'm saying. It's not a good idea to go out in this heavy rain without an umbrella. You should take an umbrella with me. She thinks.
It feels like the sky is mocking my mistake. This whole situation has made it almost impossible for me to escape this man. As if even God wants me to seek his help. Neja reluctantly begins to walk with her, and then thanks her. On the way home, contrary to Naiso's expectations, the man did not say a word, although she had hoped he would want to talk. As
she walked, Naiso realized that the speed Roseboy was walking was too slow for her height. She thought of her husband, Nicole, who was also tall, but always outpaced her. For the first time, Naiso felt truly blessed to have someone taking care of her and walking with her.
Nijo asked Roseboy softly, "Your girlfriend won't like this. And what if she finds out you shared an umbrella with a stranger?"
Roseboy asked, "Who told you she's my girlfriend?"
Nice asked, "Isn't she your girlfriend, the one I saw you with at the restaurant?"
Roseboy replied, "No, she's not my girlfriend." Roseboy tells her that she's just my friend, and Nijo falls silent. Then Roseboy says again, "Believe me, she really is just my friend." But then Roseboy noticed a speeding car coming towards him. To prevent Nizo from being splashed with water, Roseboy grabbed Nizo, pulled him aside, and covered him with himself. But doing so had suddenly brought Nizo and the Roseboy very close. The Roseboy apologized, breathing lightly, in a voice almost like a whisper. "Sorry, the car was coming too fast. I was really worried you might get hurt, so I pulled you to my side." Nizo was completely stunned for a moment. Her heart raced.
As if she could suddenly hear her own heartbeat. She was nervous, but somewhere deep inside, a strange sense of belonging arose, something no one had ever felt for her before. She said softly, in a voice almost trembling, "It's okay, but..." It was a little scary. Nijo was completely shocked. She couldn't understand why he was doing so much for her, why he always put himself before her safety. She looked down and saw her coat was completely soaked through, while barely a few drops had fallen on Kudaka's clothes. It was then that she realized he had turned his entire body toward her to shield her from the rain. A strange warmth arose in Nijo's heart, one she had never felt for herself before. Nezo thought to herself, I have to ask him clearly. Is he interested in me? If that's really the case, then I have to draw the line right now. I can't get myself into another mess. There was fear in her heart, and also a strange hope, which she couldn't quite name. Then she gathered courage. Her voice was slow, soft, and a little shaky, as if she herself was afraid of the answer. You. She paused, her eyes searching the Rose Boy's face. Why are you so kind to me?
The Rose Boy looked her straight in the eyes and said, And I really want to get to know you.
Nijo immediately lowered his gaze. No, she said softly. There's no need for that.
The Rose Boy paused, slightly furrowing his brow. What do you mean?
You're young, and popular with women, he said, his voice quivering slightly. Then, why is a guy your age trying to date an older woman like me?
The Rose Boy said without hesitation, If I'm young and popular with women, then why can't I be with an older woman? But Nijo held his heart and arms.
She said softly but firmly, No. You can't. Nezo gently raised his hand to stop her. I'm home, she said softly. Then after a brief hesitation he added, And thank you for driving me this far.
The Rose Boy looked into her eyes, as if trying to read every emotion hidden behind her words. Then he asked, Do you really want to remain strangers?
Nezo remained completely silent for a few seconds. Her breathing had slowed, and hesitation was clearly visible on her face. But in the end, she said the same thing. We will remain strangers. There was no breakdown, no anger on the Rose Boy's face, just a calm, cold acceptance. Okay, he said simply, and then left without looking back. The sound of his footsteps slowly faded away, and Nezo stood there, completely stunned. She thought he would try to stop her, put in a little pressure, or at least ask why she said that. But the man pulled his heart back together and walked away, much more easily than Nezo had expected. His final reply, strangely conciliatory, without argument, without question, shook Nezo to the core. She couldn't understand whether she should feel relief, or something, the pain of loss. And then she slowly walked towards her house. But with her steps, the same question kept revolving in her mind. Why is he so interested in me? Maybe it's because he's young. And sometimes young people just chase after curiosity. Nezo said to himself, maybe it's the same thing. Just a curiosity. She reached her door, took out her key, and as she opened, their eyes were fixed on something lying right below. An umbrella. At that moment, she immediately realized Mikula had forgotten to take an umbrella. In such heavy rain. He must have gotten wet himself. Nezo closed her eyes for a moment. A strange silence spread within her. She knew very well when it comes to men, often they don't try hard enough, but instead become dependent on women. And if a man's wife is understanding and keen, she becomes the heart of the family, and it is the man's duty to earn, support, and sacrifice to maintain the home. Brother. The truth is, such a handsome, genuine-looking Rose Boy appeared before her, cared for her so much, got himself drenched in the rain, but Neisho's heart didn't even go for him. She doesn't even think about him. No romance, no hope, no fantasy. Instead, as she slowly pays off her debt, she thinks something completely different. Maybe, when this is all over, I can think about remarrying my husband. The thought itself was sad, because the man she calls her husband, Mikol, doesn't care about her at all. Mikol doesn't hold a place for her. He pretends to the world that he's not married, as if Neho isn't a part of his life, as if being his wife is a burden, a shame. And then Nezo picked up the umbrella. As her fingers touched the umbrella's handle, a sense of unease rose within her. What if he got drenched in the rain? Thinking of this, she set out, walking slowly towards his company. The night breeze brushed her face, and each step seemed to carry an unspoken worry. She walked a long distance. Several stops. After a while, she took out her phone and called him. The ringtone rang 2 or 3 times. And then suddenly, the call was disconnected. Nezo stood there, her hands slowly dropping. A slight sadness crept into her eyes. It seems our paths have parted here, she said to herself. She thinks he didn't even see the message I sent. Maybe his phone battery died, but at the same time, I shouldn't have come here for someone like that without confirming it. Maybe I was overthinking it. But then, Neiko's steps suddenly stop.
Her gaze involuntarily flickers forward, and what she sees is Mikol. He was coming toward her, but not alone. He had a girl with him. The two, under the same umbrella, walking very close together. So close as if they were shielding each other not from the rain, but from the world. The girl standing next to Nicole, Ari, saw Nezo staring at her and, raising a slight eyebrow, said,
"Hey, what's wrong with that girl? Why is she looking at us like that?"
There was less surprise in her voice, and more a hint of slight irritation. But Nikolai, as if nothing had happened, said casually,
"Why did you come to pick me up in such heavy rain?"
Then she looked at Ari and said,
"They're just my family, a close friend, almost like a relative."
Nezo froze at the word family. For her, it was like rubbing salt on an old wound.
As Nicole said this, she moved closer to Nezo and stood under the same umbrella she had come to give him. The rain was now falling like a curtain around them. Ari couldn't understand anything. Her eyes were filled with both confusion and disagreement. Nicole said casually,
"So, Ari, I'm leaving now. See you tomorrow. Bye." Then Michelle slowly turned to her and asked, "Why did you come all this way? To pick me up? And that too, without telling me. This is completely against your nature. When did you start being so caring?"
Nasu remained silent. Her silence reflected fear, confusion, and the scene where she had seen Michelle share an umbrella with another girl. When she didn't answer, Michelle said a little more sternly,
"Nasu, will you tell me what's going on? And why are you standing here, not moving?"
Nasu's inner turmoil could no longer be hidden. She asked in a low voice,
That girl, who was she?
Michelle said without hesitation. "It was Ari, my co-worker."
But as soon as she saw the expression on Nasu's face, insecurity, doubt, and a hint of fear, she took a deep breath and asked, "Do you really think that everything is based solely on attraction between a boy and a girl?" Nasu tried to quickly deny it.
No, that's not what I meant.
But Michelle interrupted her. "Okay, calm down. You're overthinking it," she said softly, but clearly. "Maybe it's because you have few friends, or people to talk to. Very few."
Nasu fell even quieter after hearing her words. Because it was true somehow.
Michelle continued. "Look, all this wasn't common before, but nowadays, friendships between boys and girls, closeness between co-workers, and various relationships are perfectly normal." He pleaded with her not to say something so embarrassing and walked away, leaving Naijo there in thought.
The Rose Boy's words, that he wanted to know her, still echoed in her ears. It was as if someone slow breathing under an umbrella, a faint whisper that touched the softest part of the heart. Naijo took a few steps forward, then stopped. The umbrella still held her fingers in its cold grip, but warmth had filled her heart. Now she realized she had missed an opportunity that was perhaps meant for her, but she couldn't seize it. The Rose Boy's hesitation, the slight glint in his eyes, and the broken sentence that he wanted to know her kept coming back to her. For the first time, Naijo understood that this wasn't just a chance to talk, but to open her heart.
The next day, both Naijo and her co-worker were exhausted. The co-worker complained
that it wasn't even peak season, yet so many group orders were coming in. She whispered that customers should pay extra for such demands.
Naijo looked at her and calmly told her to rest. She would handle all the orders herself.
Relief momentarily appeared in the worker's eyes.
Grateful, Naijo secretly wished that the day would be quiet and that no new customers would come, except for Rose's. Seeing Rose's face always filled her with an unknown sense of courage.
Just then, the door opened, and both were startled when Roseboy entered. She gave the co-worker just a brief glance. It seemed almost crazy to the co-worker
That Roseboy had actually come, and that he looked as handsome today as he had last seen her. The worker smiled and said she would be resting, and told the Roseboy to place the order with Nasu.
Instead of ordering, he quietly passed by Nasu, completely ignoring her. Friends, this is where today's chapter ends. The story is about to take an even more interesting turn, and to find out what happens next, subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. If you enjoyed this video, please like it so we can work harder and harder to bring you new episodes.
We can work harder and harder to bring you new episodes.
2 weeks passed. Menshal was now staying at work longer and even staying out on weekends. Life went on as usual. Nahu continued with her work. Roseboy no longer spoke to Nahu, as he himself had said. Nahu felt a little bad about his behavior. Even though she had made the decision to stay away, there was still hope deep inside. Perhaps she had mistakenly assumed he loved her. But perhaps it was for the best. If her feelings had been true, it would have hurt even more. Menshal no longer even responded to Nahu's messages. She would go to sleep before he came home, and leave in the morning before he woke up. Slowly, her days and nights began to fade into silence. One day, Nahu was serving at a table where a man was celebrating his divorce. The man had already drunk too much. He was loudly boasting to his friends that his life was now set, would now flirt with young women. His friends were laughing. Dirty jokes were being told, and the atmosphere was gradually becoming more and more vile. Suddenly, the drunk man's eyes fell on Nahu. He looked her up and down, and thought it would be very flattering to get her attention. He called out loudly to Nahu, and demanded that she have a drink with him. Nahu was a little scared. Her heart raced. She didn't like this behavior at all. She politely refused. And then, the man started shouting, threatening to complain and have the diner shut down. The owner immediately came running. He asked, "What happened?" Some customers supported Nahu. They clearly stated that the man was being rude to her. The drunk man became even more enraged. He shouted, "I'm a regular customer. Serve me the way I want, or else I'll stop coming here." The owner begged for forgiveness and said dinner was free for him. But that wasn't enough for the man. He crossed all boundaries and said, "That girl should get down on her knees and say sorry." The owner was arguing with him. But before he could speak, Nahu herself got down on her knees. She softly said, "Sorry." She didn't want her boss to have any problems because of her. There was no shame on her face, only a heavy sense of exhaustion and fear.
The boss immediately grabbed her hand, lifted her up, and said, "Don't do this. It's not your fault." But it was too late. Later, the owner scolded her. She said she was wrong to bow down to that rude man. He didn't want Nahu to be insulted like that. He cared for Nahu, genuinely, from the heart. And that night, for the first time, Nahu realized that even silence sometimes feels as heavy as a scream. Because he knew Nahu was already living a tough life. There are many people in this world who hurt others without reason. The boss's concern brought Nahu some relief. She smiled slightly and said that everything was fine. At least they hadn't lost a regular customer. Nahu had been facing hardships since childhood. So now she didn't take such incidents to heart. She had developed a habit of silently swallowing the pain. The boss offered to drop her home. Nahu softly said that she had to leave for her next job. The boss asked in surprise, "When do you rest?" Then he paused, and softly said, "Do you have so many days off?" Hearing this, Nahu's heart fluttered slightly. She remembered that day. When the day collectors had come to their house for the first time, they had destroyed everything, and turned the house into a place of terror with all sorts of threats. She was completely devastated at that moment. And in that broken state, Menshul had held her, crying, and said that he would pay all the debts, and then they could start a happy life. But the reality was far from that promise. Nahu simply replied to the boss, "Yes, now she lives every day in fear of the dead collectors. Over there, on the other side of the street." The same drunk man was staggering home. He was telling his friends on the phone how much he loved it. When the waitress knelt in front of him, he laughed and said, "Now that girl will be nicer to me next time. She knows not to upset me." She didn't realize that someone was following her. Fresh footsteps came from behind. She didn't even look back. Suddenly, someone hit him so hard that he fell straight onto the road. He screamed, "Who dared touch me?" Someone grabbed his hair and lifted his head. A cold, calm voice called out, "Do you want to die?" The drunk man pushed the stranger's hand away and angrily shouted that he would teach him a lesson. He raised his hand and slapped him. The young boy slowly got up, wiped the blood from his lips, and smiled. A smile so calm, as if he hadn't felt any pain. He asked, "Do you know who I am?" The drunk man yelled that he didn't know, so the boy said, "Now know me." And the next moment, blood sprayed through the air, as if someone had cut the night in two. That same evening, Nahu was working the night shift at a convenience store. The night was already late, but there was still work to be done. There was fatigue in his eyes, and a strange uneasiness in his heart. He knew it wasn't normal for customers to arrive so late at night. Something was about to happen. Her eyes were starting to feel heavy. It was as if the fatigue of the entire day had left her body and settled on her eyelids. She took a small dose, leaning on the store counter. Suddenly, a small sound was heard so faint, as if someone had just touched the air. Nahu's eyes shot open. She slowly regained her breath and was about to say hello when her eyes fell on the man standing in front of her, and she paused for a moment. It was the same boy from the flower shop, the same handsome guy, whose smile always seemed like a strange sunshine. Nahu's first thought was, is this just a coincidence? Or is there some strange thread that always brings him to the exact place where I am? Suddenly, a soft voice startled her. "Hello." She was about to say something when she recognized him. It was the same boy, the handsome guy from the flower shop. Nahu thought, is this really a coincidence? First the flower shop, then the diner, and now here too. It felt a little strange, but she figured she'd have to serve him. The boy was just standing with a pack of bandages on the counter. His face was covered in wounds. A slight worry rose in Nahu's heart. The boy wasn't saying anything, just looking at her. His eyes were empty, but there was something deep in them. Nahu looked at his wounds and wondered, who could be the monster who did this? She felt bad, but she didn't know if she had the right to ask. Last time, they had decided to remain strangers. Yet, she couldn't ignore him. He said softly, just applying a bandage will ruin the wound. Boomtahia was slightly surprised that she was talking to him. Nahu thought this might be interference, but then the boy smiled. He was pleased that Nahu was concerned. Suddenly, he leaned over the counter and came closer to her. There was mischief in his eyes. He said softly, so, what should I do? Teach me. Nahu was slightly embarrassed by his tone and his approach, but she composed herself and spoke in an informal tone, because she was older than him. Come on, I'll help. Bam liked that she was speaking informally. Let's go outside. I'll treat your wound there. The boy followed her like an obedient puppy. Nahu took out a healing ointment. The boy said, I don't know how to use it. Nahu said with slight irritation, I'll do it. Bear with it if it hurts. She began to clean his wounds. The boy shivered slightly. Nahu thought he might be in pain, but he said, it feels a little ticklish. He was clearly enjoying the feeling of her touch. Nahu asked, how old are you? He said, I'm an adult. Nahu said, you're grown up, yet you still fight in the streets. Boomtahia said softly, it's not my fault. Life is like this. There's less happiness. There are problems at home too. His words touched Nahu's heart. She remembered their past, the same loneliness, the same fatigue. She felt they were alike. She looked into his eyes. There was sadness, a hidden pain. Nahu said softly, last time you asked if we could meet. Come on, let's meet now. The boy's eyes lit up. Can I call you Nona? Nahu immediately refused. I'm older than you. Call me Nahu. He smiled. He liked the connection. He extended his phone and said, add contact. Everything went smoothly and well that evening. At Michelle's office, the company party continued late that night. Colleagues were all drinking. Marshall had drunk so much that she had no idea how much she had. Ari kept looking at her glass. She couldn't tell what she was drinking, but she felt it was wrong to ignore her boss's instructions. Secretly, Marshall replaced her glass with water. Ari looked at her in surprise. He hadn't expected it, but this small gesture touched him. Colleagues jokingly asked, what type of girl don't you like? Marshall laughed and said, I don't like those old ladies, who always look tired and listless. I like young girls, who take care of themselves, wear nice lingerie. He immediately remembered Nahu, her dull look, her tired eyes. He thought to himself, perhaps that's the type that irritates him the most. Colleagues laughed. It seems you're just hanging out with someone like that. Marshall laughed lightly and said, I only like beautiful young girls. Hearing this, his own mood suddenly became heavy. Ari listened to their conversation and for a moment realized she was exactly the type Machal liked. A slight tinge of hope rose in her heart. She liked Machal and wished he looked at her the same way. Meanwhile, Nahu was looking at her phone. A few days ago, she and Boomtahia had exchanged numbers. Today she thought maybe she should try to understand him a little more. Then the boy himself started messaging her. Nahu found his name a bit unusual again, but there was a sincerity in his messages. Machal, on the other hand, hadn't responded to her messages yet. Nahu thought she might be busy with work, so she decided not to disturb her. The party ended late. Ari was so drunk she could barely stand on her own, so Machal went to drop her home. Her steps were faltering on the way. Suddenly, Ari grabbed her hand and rested his head on her shoulder. She said softly, You're not like all the other men. Her voice was intoxicated, but the feeling was genuine. Gathering some courage, she confessed that she had liked Machal for a long time. She held his hand tightly and said, Come to my house. That night, Machal didn't reply to Nahu. He came home late and went straight to sleep without thinking. Nahu thought Mitchell might be busy, but in reality, he was with Ari, sleeping soundly in her arms. On the other hand, Nahu was heading home, exhausted, after finishing her night shift. She hadn't rested for a minute the entire night. Arriving home, she quietly entered so as not to wake Mitchell, but her steps froze. The house was empty. Mitchell wasn't there. He was still sleeping in Ari's arms. In the morning, Mitchell called. He said the corporate party had run long, and he was staying at a nearby bathhouse. He was also upset that Nahu was worrying about him. He said he was going straight to work and hung up. Nahu felt she had overreacted. She hadn't even realized her husband could lie. Meanwhile, Mitchell hugged Ari and left for work without hesitation, completely happy with last night. A new morning. Jimu. A boy was walking about his work, looking down. Suddenly, someone approached him and called his name. He stopped. It was Bom Taiha. Jimu said a soft, "Hello." He was surprised that Taiha recognized him after all these years. Bom was popular at school. Jimu a nerd. Yet Bom had never been a bully. Jimu asked in a friendly tone, "What was the matter?" Bom smiled, completely casual. "Let's switch shoes." Jimu was stunned. His cheap sneakers were nothing compared to Bom's expensive ones. He thought it might be a joke, but he agreed anyway. They exchanged shoes. It was beneficial for Jimu, and Bom thanked him. Taiha was sitting alone a little distance away, listening to music. Just then, Hiji came up to him. "What are you listening to?" He said. "Will you listen?" "To a love song from an old band, Ajuma." Hiji was surprised. No one listens to songs like that anymore. Bom said, "I like them." Noticing his cheap sneakers, she asked, "What happened to the shoes?" He smiled. "I like them just like that." Just then, their friends passed by. They were jealous. "Why is every girl crazy about Bom Taiha?" Don said, "Girls just like his face." They laughed and said that Bom Taiha would steal Hiji too. The jealousy and anger were evident in their eyes. Flower store. Nahu. Nahu was waiting on customers at the store. Her coworker said that maybe she was wrong. That handsome guy probably doesn't like Nahu. Now he doesn't even want Nahu to serve him. Nahu took a deep breath. The thought crossed her mind. Will he come today? She remembered the previous night, but didn't tell her friend. Just then, a familiar face appeared at the door. Bom Taiha. He walked straight toward Nahu. Confident, a slight smile, and the wounds on his face still looking fresh. Her colleague was astonished. Who had disfigured such a beautiful face? Bom said, "I'm here to buy flowers." He came a little closer, a slight smile. Nahu hesitated. He asked, "What kind of flowers?" He said playfully, "You should know. We know each other now." Nahu began making a bouquet of roses. The boy stood there, just looking at her. Her friends sensed a flirty atmosphere between them. Suddenly, Bom Taiha asked, "Are you free after work?" Nahu was embarrassed. She said, "Do you want me to scold you?" Taya thought to herself, "Yeah, it would be nice if I scolded you too," and smiled. Nahu finished work at the flower store. Bom Taiha was waiting for her at the door. Nahu had her next job, but she wanted to spend a little more time with him. He said, "I remember you also work at the meat counter. I'll drop you off." Jokingly, he said, "You just met me, and you don't have time for me." There was an innocent complaint in his tone. Nahu realized the guy was young, but tall, broad, and surprisingly mature. Taiha noticed Nahu looking at him intently. He asked, "What are you thinking?" Nahu said, "You're very tall, that's all." He laughed. He said, "You're good at this." Then, with a dramatic flourish, he said, "I got a little jealous." Nahu was surprised. Jealous for what? Taiha looked at him. Her innocence was evident. Then he said, "I love taking you for walks." Nahu didn't refuse. She looked at his old sneakers.
Nahu didn't refuse. Her eyes fell on Bom Tai-ha's old sneakers. No matter how worn they were, they seemed to suit him strangely. Nahu asked, "Why do you buy flowers every day? Why not something practical?" Bom Tai-ha thought for a while and said softly, "There's so little joy in life, so why not make myself a little happier?" Then he smiled slightly and said, "Your smile is so nice." Hearing this, Nahu was deeply touched. The smile seemed to come from the heart. She felt that there was very little joy left in her own life. She realized how mature and wise this boy was. She felt ashamed that she had previously misunderstood his actions. For so many years, she had been making bouquets for others, but never imagined that flowers could make her happy too. Nahu softly thanked her for her company. Bom Tai-ha replied, "If you're grateful, keep seeing us." A sincere smile adorned her face. During lunch break, Ari was looking for Michelle in the office. She overheard some coworkers talking about her with Michelle. A man said, "Ari seems a bit arrogant." He then laughed and said, "Women change with age. Take advantage while they're young." Ari remained silent, waiting to see what Michelle would say. But she said nothing. The same man then jokingly asked if something had happened between them. Hearing this, Michelle's mood soured. She said coldly, "You've been at the company for so many years, but you never got a high position. Stop talking and work." He went straight to her and said, "Stop this unnecessary laughing. You look like an idiot." With that, he walked toward the stairs, irritated by his coworker's remarks. At that moment, Ari came over and hugged him. She had overheard the entire conversation and was afraid that Michelle was playing with her feelings. But now she realized he was a good person. She feared he would forget her after that night, but that fear was misplaced. Ari was overjoyed. She thought she could never leave Michelle. Ari had carefully prepared dinner for Michelle at home, but that evening he was having dinner with his mistress. He had no intention of returning home. Nasu was working the night shift at the hotel. She was receiving intrusive messages from Bomdae. He would pay her attention, care for her, wish her good day. Nasu found his conversations very pleasant. She thought this guy was so young, that's why he paid so much attention. But she loved the attention. Suddenly, a very drunk man staggered into the lobby. He demanded to call a girl. Nahu politely asked for his card. He handed him his driver's license and began to behave rudely. Nahu wasn't sure how to handle it. Just then, another man entered the lobby. He asked if any rooms were available. Then he offered his card and said he was booking all available rooms for the day. Nahu was shocked. She had never seen anything like this before. Bom Tai-ha was standing in a corner, watching all this. He received a message on his phone. Problem solved. The drunk man left angrily, muttering that he couldn't find a room. The motel manager was also surprised that all the rooms were booked. She happily told Nahu to go home quickly. Nahu left very happy. She felt that luck was on her side today. She thought she would get a good night's sleep. But as soon as she got home, her heart sank. The food left for Mitchell was completely untouched, and he himself was not at home. Chapter 10. Nahu kept receiving caring messages from Bom Tai-ha. He worried about her, wished her good day, and texted her all day long. Nahu thought perhaps he was so attentive because he was young. She loved his attention. Each message seemed to brighten her mood a little. Yet, she never replied. She couldn't figure out what to write. Bom Tai-ha was smiling and wondering how to get him to reply. His friend Donik asked, "Why are you smiling so much and looking at your phone?" Bom replied, "She's ignoring me," and laughed. His friend was surprised that a girl could ignore him. He was even more shocked that Bom Tai-ha was texting a girl. Meanwhile, Nahu was standing in the kitchen cooking Mitchell's favorite dish. Mitchell was in a good mood because he had just met Ari. He suddenly felt the urge to say something nice to Nahu. The girl blew on the spoon and gave it to him to taste. Mitchell said, "You cook so well. Your food is amazing. Mitchell had no guilt about cheating. He just felt a little bad. He thought cheating improves relationships in the long run. He thanked Nahu for paying for the perfume. Then a thought came to his mind. He thought Nahu's figure was more attractive than Ari's. This thought excited him a little. He gently bit her ear and softly said, "It's been a while since we spent time together." He began touching her body, giving her another bite on the neck. The girl said softly, "Please leave me. I'm getting late for work." Michelle let go. Nahu wondered if he was offended. Michelle said, "No, it's fine." He hadn't expected anything else from her. He lay down on the bed and began texting Ari. They had a relaxed conversation. Ari suggested they choose a perfume together. Michelle remembered that when he went shopping with Nahu, she always chose cheap and boring clothes, but her eyes lingered on beautiful things, with a slight regret. Whenever he asked if he liked it, "Should I buy it for you?" Nahu would refuse. She felt bad about spending money on herself. This irritated Michelle. She felt it would be better to go with Ari. Nahu was boring. Bom Tai-ha met his subordinate in a dark alley. The young man had gathered information about Nahu's husband. He confirmed that he wasn't worthy of her. Bom Tai-ha lit a lighter and set a photo on fire. There was a cold satisfaction in his eyes. He was ready to take action. Nahu's night shift was about to end. His eyes were drifting shut with sleep. He had to start another shift at the meat diner. Then, Bom Tai-ha texted, "I want to meet you for a while." Nahu didn't refuse. He was glad that someone wanted to spend some time with him. Bom Tai-ha stood outside the motel, waiting for him. The girl kept looking at him. He looked handsome, confident, and a little different. Nahu admired his style. She thought he wasn't as immature as she'd first thought. Nahu said, "I don't have much time. I have to go to another job." Bom Tai-ha said, "It's okay. A short meeting will suffice. I'll drop you off." Looking at the alley, he said, "This place is very dark and dangerous. You must be scared to walk alone." Nahu said, "No, I'm not scared." He said, "I was scared." In a light flirtation, he smiled. "You're so big, like a walking barrier." Nahu looked at him. He laughed. "So, should I follow you like this?" He started walking behind her, smiling. Nahu tilted her head back slightly, their eyes meeting. She liked it. A sense of safety filled her. Nahu said, "Let's be quiet now." Bom Tai-ha slowed down and watched her walk. She looked so delicate. Then his eyes fell on her neck. Seeing the bite mark, her face went cold. Jealousy quickly got up. He looked at her figure. She looked so delicate. A protective feeling suddenly arose in him. Then his gaze fell on her neck. His face went cold at the sight of the bite mark. Jealousy was boiling deep inside. He reached out and pulled Nahu to him, leaning over her. Nahu asked in slight panic, "What happened?" Bom Tai-ha said calmly, "It seems you've been bitten by an insect." His fingers went to Nahu's neck, very softly, as if he wanted to read the small mark. Nahu was surprised. Insects were very rare this season, and she felt no pain at all. He said, "It's definitely an insect bite," but his tone was strange. Scenes from that morning flashed through Nahu's mind. Perhaps Michelle had left that mark. Her cheeks heated. A deep wave of shame washed over her that Bom Tai-ha had noticed it. She quickly said, "Yes, it was probably a bug bite," and lightly placed her hand on her neck, as if trying to hide the truth. Bom Tai-ha exhaled, moving closer to her. His finger traced the mark again, this time more slowly. Jealousy and anger clashed within her, but she controlled herself and pretended she believed him. He said, "It needs a bandage," and searched his pocket for something. Nahu breathed a sigh of relief. She thought he'd agreed. He very softly applied the bandage to her neck, then smoothed it lightly with his palm. A strange feeling arose within Nahu, a little awkward, but also a little good. Then he asked, "Why don't you reply to my texts? I feel bad when you don't." There was a palpable sadness in his words.
Nahu had never heard such a message from anyone. The thought of someone caring about her was completely new to her. She didn't know what to say. Then she remembered how bad she felt when Mitchell didn't respond to her messages. A sharp stab of guilt came over her, and she softly said, "Sorry." She had never used that word before. He said even more heartily, "You're probably bored of me." Nahu actually wanted to talk, as she had no friends, and the feeling that someone was genuinely interested in her warmed her up a bit. Bom Taha stepped forward and adjusted her collar, saying, "You don't need to say sorry. I want to talk to you myself. That's why I'm texting." Then he leaned in slightly and said, "I was just throwing a tantrum like a child." Then he said, "Nahu, you don't need to hurt yourself for anyone. Do whatever your heart desires." Nahu had heard these words for the first time in her life. For the first time, someone had told her to do what her heart desires. Her mood suddenly lightened and improved. She asked her boss if she could buy a flower. The boss said, "You work so hard, I'll give it to you for free." But Nahu insisted she pay. She decided to buy herself a gift this time, and it brought a little joy. It was the first time she had bought something for herself. She thought about putting the flower in a vase before her next job, to keep it from wilting. She filled a small vial with water and placed the rose in it. A light, quiet joy spread through her heart. She decided to share this moment with Bom Taha. She took a photo of the rose and sent him a message. Just then, Michel came home. He asked, "What are you doing at home? You haven't gone to work." Nahu said, "I just came for a while. I'm about to leave." She was happy that he might be back, but Mitchell said he was just changing and going overtime. Just then, his eyes fell on the rose. He stopped and asked, "Where did this flower come from?" Nahu said, "I bought it for myself, a rose for myself." Something inside him shifted. For a moment, he felt sorry for Nahu. He thought how lonely she looked, and for a moment, he felt like touching her. Then another thought came to his mind. He was giving flowers to two women. The thought sent a strange tingle through his nerves. He decided to show Nahu some love, and then go see Ari. But Nahu stopped him and said, "I'm having my dangerous period right now." He became irritated. He grabbed her chin and said, "You can never get pregnant anyway." There was irritation in his voice. He said, "You always ruin everything," and left angrily. Nahu sat down on the ground. Her heart was shattered. At that very moment, Bom Taha was looking at Nahu's message. He was overjoyed that Nahu had written to him. Just then, some girls who recognized him came by. They were surprised to see someone like Bom Taha in this poor area. They said, "It's a coincidence that we found you here." Bom Taha smiled slightly. He thought, "I don't believe in coincidences." It occurred to him that behind every coincidence, there are many inevitabilities, one after another, adding up, so that one day, that moment, brings you to the place where you are destined to meet. He said with a smile, "There are no accidents." Naha was folding clothes when she found Mitchell's shirt. She noticed a lipstick mark on the collar. A blankness filled her mind. The heart started beating fast. Mitchell was waiting for Ari in the parking lot. Ari smiled at him and asked where they were going today. But his anger was still simmering after the scene with Nahu. He said nothing, just opened the car door and abruptly pulled Ari towards him. He knew Ari would never refuse him, so he took advantage of that weakness. Meanwhile, Nahu was completely distracted. Her thoughts were interrupted by the lipstick mark on her husband's shirt. Things were falling from her hands. A glass slipped from her hand and broke into pieces. The red mark was the only thing on her mind. Nahu had never used makeup, so she kept convincing herself that it was probably her misunderstanding. I must be overthinking. She was afraid that if her suspicions turned out to be wrong, Mitchell would be hurt. She held back the tears that had gathered in the corner of her eyes and told herself not to worry and that everything would be fine. But at that very moment of misfortune, she overheard a client's phone call. The client was consoling her friend, whose husband had cheated on her. That awakened the fear hidden in Nahu's heart. She realized that Michelle was cheating on her, perhaps because they had no children. Usually, work distracted her, but today, everything was drawing her back to the same pain. She wondered, why is this happening to me? She always forced herself to think positively during difficult times, but now she didn't know what was left of her and Michelle's relationship. Just then, Bomtaiha rode his bike outside the store where Nahu worked. He saw Nahu sitting slumped over through the glass window, sadness evident in her eyes and face. It dawned on him, the more I want to stay away from it, the more I'm drawn to it. He didn't take off his helmet and went straight inside. Nahu was so lost in her thoughts that she didn't even hear the customer approach. She thought, this man is a bit strange. He came without saying a word, didn't even buy anything. Then she noticed his height. Tall, strong figure. For a moment, a flash of light crossed her mind, as if she recognized someone. Just then, the boy held his phone out to her. There was a message on the screen. It all made sense. Bomtaiha was flirting again. Nahu sighed. Good. It wasn't a stranger. He asked, do you want to be scolded? In a slightly joking tone. Bomtaiha removed his helmet. There was a slight red glow in his eyes. Nahu asked, why are you wearing a helmet? He said, I came straight from work to see you. The girl thought, maybe he works as a delivery boy. She didn't even ask him. He said, be careful on the road. He laughed and said, oh, so you're worried about me. Nahu jokingly asked him to stand up and lift his helmet over his head as if it were punishment for her joke. He actually did, and stood up. Nahu was speechless for a moment. Bomtaiha stood there, a little smug, yet incredibly charming. Nahu asked, why did you come? He said, I didn't have dinner. I had to buy something. The girl worried that he might be hungry. She scolded him. If you don't have time to eat, change jobs. Bomtaiha was amazed by her concern. He liked it. For a moment, his mind flashed back to the night when he was about to witness the truth. That Nahu's husband was with his mistress. He was disgusted to think that Nahu had such a man. But he remained patient. He stood next to her and said, I can't quit. My work is too important. Nahu remembered telling her about his family problems. She thought he really worked hard, and someone with such a large frame deserved good food. She said she would treat him to dinner today. Nahu said, choose whatever you like. I'll treat you. The boy stared at her for a while. Then he said, I'll just take your heart. Buying food is my job. He placed his hand on the shelf and said, just help me choose the tastiest things. Nahu was embarrassed. She thought he was joking again. He stood close, his strong back, his warm presence. It made Nahu's breath hitch. Then her eyes fell on Bomtaiha's wrist. It was the beginning of a sentence in the form of a tattoo. Nahu asked, what's that on your wrist? Bomtaiha looked at him. For a moment, she thought Nahu didn't like tattoos. Maybe she thought he was too rough. He rolled up his sleeve so Nahu could see clearly. Then he said, if you don't like it, I'll erase it. Nahu immediately grabbed his hand. His voice trembled slightly. Tell me why this scar is there, he said. His eyes were filled with worry. Bomtaiha paused for a moment. She remembered how wounds bled beneath the blackening. Nahu thought, how much hardship this young boy must have endured. Has he done this to himself? She wanted to know the story behind his sad eyes. Bomtaiha read everything on his face. She felt Nahu sympathizing with her, and it brought her a slight joy. It even felt a little funny. She sensed a strange pleasure in his expression, as if she were opening up to him. At that very moment, she thought it might be a good idea to tease him a little more. As if she were opening up to him. At that very moment, she thought it might be a good idea to tease him a little more. The boy gently ran his fingers over her arm and said in a quiet voice, the scars are from the accident. Nahu was slightly startled by his answer. There was an ashy, searching look in her eyes. She had reacted exactly as she had expected. Bom Tai-ha liked it. The knife hidden in it held a strange allure for her. He gently told her not to worry. Then he began picking at the food. Nahu realized she had skillfully lied. But the scars were old, and she didn't want to question it right now. The girl helped him choose a delicious meal, and said that since she was treating him, he should trust her. Nahu sat him down and returned to the counter. Bom Tai-ha smiled slightly. He was pleased that the girl cared about him. He tried to be normal and calm around her. Nahu was confused, as always. This boy gave her conflicting feelings, but deep inside, she accepted that she liked him. She also liked that she could escape her monotonous life and the hassles associated with Miyil for a while. Bom Tai-ha was strange to her, with scars, old wounds, and a suspicious job. Everything about him was strange, yet attractive. Meanwhile, Michiel and Ari were sitting around, talking. The girl suddenly placed her head on his chest and said that she wanted to marry him. Michiel's body tensed in an instant. She asked why he was reacting like this. Mitchell admitted that she had never considered marriage. This made her uncomfortable. To lighten the mood, she joked that she was too young to get married. Ari immediately jumped in and said in an indignant tone that Mitchell was old enough to get married and that she was his girlfriend. So it was all fine. There was clear displeasure in her voice. Mitchell pulled her aside and explained that it wasn't time for marriage. He said that young girls are in a hurry, and it's foolish to waste their youth on one man. Ari gave him a confused and angry look, but Mitchell stood his ground. He thought to himself that he had almost been caught. To him, it was all just fun. But Ari believed it to be true. He thought Ari came from a good, wealthy family. Her house, her lifestyle, her clothes, her car. Everything reflected that. She was well-groomed and seemed to have been raised in a loving home. She was the complete opposite of Nahu. And perhaps that's what appealed to him. Ari didn't stop talking. She asked how Michiel envisioned his family after marriage. Michiel thought and said he wanted a cozy apartment, a car that could carry the entire family, and a child. Ari was touched by his vision. She asked if he really wanted a child. Michiel remembered an unpleasant moment from his past, a time when he had the chance to have everything. He felt bad that Nahu was so weak that she couldn't have a child. But now he felt a sense of relief that things had changed. A child was a luxury for them. She told Ari that raising a child was difficult and expensive, so she wasn't ready yet. Ari sensed the bitterness hidden in her voice. He wanted to support her in some way. She clung closer to him and said that her dream would definitely come true. They both lay there, lost in their own thoughts. Night covered the city. Far away, a lone man stood on the roof of a tall building, staring up at the empty sky. It was Bom Tai-ha. He was contemplating a recent conversation with his colleague. They were sitting in the passenger seat of an expensive car. Bom Tai-ha held out his wrist to him and asked what he was looking at. The man thought it was a Buddhist line tattoo. Bom Tai-ha smiled with a slightly smug expression. He began to think of Nahu again. How was it possible that someone would notice the white scars hidden beneath the blackening instead of the ink first? He stood, thinking how amazing she was. He stood, wishing he could wait for her. How could it be? How could someone notice the white scars hidden beneath the blackness before they even see the ink? This question lingered in his mind for a long time. He stood there, static, as if trapped in his own thoughts. He was thinking how amazing Nahu was. And in that moment, he found himself wishing he could wait for her. Wait for her relationship to end, like any adult would. But he knew that wouldn't happen. He realized he was too impatient. And even if he hadn't done anything, he had already lost his freedom. The source of suffering is attachment. This thought pierced his chest like a knife. Bam! Tai-ha took a deep breath and realized that his suffering had already begun. Attachment had overwhelmed him. He couldn't and wouldn't stop it. Later that night, Nahu returned home, lost in her own thoughts, as always. Suddenly, she recognized the man walking toward her. The same drunk man who had been harassing her at the diner. Nahu's body tensed. She thought he might be about to try on her again. But as soon as his eyes fell on Nahu, the man froze in fear. His face went white. He turned and without a word ran away. Nahu was shocked. She didn't understand why he was scared. But she was relieved that she had reached home safely. When she entered the house, Michil was already asleep. Nahu slowly changed and lay down. She found it strange that he had fallen asleep so quickly. She thought he really worked hard. Perhaps he was overworked. This thought worried her. Suddenly, her phone vibrated. A girl's name flashed on the screen. Nahu's heart skipped a beat. Fear and anxiety arose simultaneously in her chest. Nahu remained confused the entire day. A web of questions had formed within her. Should she have answered the call? So she could find out what the young girl wanted from Mitchell. Jealousy coursed through her veins. Was she just a work colleague? Or something more? Mitchell was fast asleep, and Nahu kept replaying the questions she wanted to ask the girl. But she couldn't decide. She was afraid she might not be able to bear the answers. She consoled herself that the girl just wanted to talk about work. A co-worker at work started showing wedding photos. Nahu was a little excited by them. It was the first time she'd seen someone's wedding photos. The girl happily explained that one day she would find a good boy and wear a white dress. She asked Nahu if planning her wedding was difficult, what kind of dress it was, where did the honeymoon go. Nahu didn't answer. These questions dragged her back to her own past. Nahu and Michil had simply filed papers. There was no ceremony. Both were amazed at how quickly the process ended. After the registration, it was as if nothing had happened. Michil asked her to go to a diner to lighten the mood. Nahu wanted to refuse, as they had to save money. But in the end, she agreed. At the diner, Michil hugged her and said they would have a lavish wedding in a year. He said Nahu would wear a beautiful dress. They would exchange diamond rings, and they would go on their honeymoon to Hawaii. Nahu believed every word. She believed everything. Michil kept teasing her that she was blushing, and they both laughed. Their laughter that day was more beautiful than any shining stone. Cars were going their separate ways on the road. Bam! Taiha kept checking his phone. He had stopped responding to Nahu's messages again. He really wanted to get closer to her. He was wondering how. If he'd known it would all turn out like this, maybe he would have taken a few more hits that day. Suddenly, a lighter flashed before his eyes. His new bodyguard wanted to help him light a cigarette. Taha stared at his face. He didn't like someone pulling him from his thoughts. He said he didn't need it. It was just candy. The bodyguard apologized hurriedly. He said he would have lit it if he smoked. Taha handed him a lollipop and told him to light the candy if he wanted. The bodyguard said he hadn't seen him before. The boy said it was his first day. Taha asked in a deep, almost unreadable voice if he had ever acquitted anyone. The young bodyguard was frightened. Nahu wasn't responding, and Taha was wondering what to do with her loser husband. The new bodyguard stammered, saying he'd never done anything like this before. Taha softly said that if his master wanted and paid, he could do anything. Then he laughed, handed the lighter back to her, and said he was joking. The bodyguard couldn't tell if it was really a joke or not. Nahu overheard two friends talking. One was saying that her husband was cheating on her. She was working multiple jobs and saving every penny, while her husband was spending it on his mistress. Nahu gasped at this. Remembering Michil's strange behavior, she wondered, is Michil really cheating? The thought sent a wave of panic through her heart. What would she do if this were true? Her breathing became heavy. A supervisor noticed she wasn't feeling well. He asked what was wrong. Nahu said she wasn't feeling well. She asked for an early leave. As soon as she got out, Nahu started running. She had no idea where she was going. Tears were welling up in her eyes. And then she remembered a familiar voice. Someone had once told her to do what her heart desired. That same voice came to her.
That man's voice, the one that had once told her to do whatever she wanted. That same voice had drawn the submissive Nahu to Mitchell's workplace again today. As soon as she entered, the girl's breath hitched. Mitchell had said he would be working at night, but Nahu had never been here before, and didn't know how to find him. Suddenly, a guard called out to her. The man said that no outsiders were allowed here and asked what she wanted. Nahu knew that Mitchell always kept his relationships hidden. She took a deep breath and said that she was his relative and needed him urgently. The guard thought for a moment and said that he didn't remember Mitchell saying he would be at work that night. Nahu's eyes darkened instantly, and she felt like she might faint right there. But then the guard suddenly offered to escort her and help her find him. He led the girl to the right department and loudly asked, "Is Mitchell here? He has a visitor." Nahu clutched the strap of her bag even tighter, and her eyes scanned every corner of the office, looking for her husband. The office was filled with employees who were working overtime. Ari heard that someone had come to see Mitchell and immediately recognized the girl, who had come with an umbrella on the rainy day. Mitchell emerged from behind his desk and asked who had come. His face hardened as soon as he saw Nahu. A heavy, piercing, awkward pause hung in the air. Nahu's eyes were fixed on him, and she continued to clutch the strap, caught between excitement and fear. The man suddenly jumped up and said that he needed to go outside for a while. Ari's curious eyes followed them. Mitchell roughly grabbed Nahu's arm and dragged her outside. His look was analytical, as if he were judging her every moment. He said, "Follow me." He kept pulling her, even though Nahu softly said that her arm was hurting. Mitchell suddenly pinned her against the wall, gripping her wrists tightly. Sensing her unease, he asked, "What are you doing here?" His voice was heavy with anger. He said that she was disgracing him. But then he realized that the girl was trembling with fear. Her voice was broken, as if she were mumbling that she was scared. He understood everything in an instant. He leaned closer to her face and asked, "Are you afraid of me?" Nahu tried to deny it, but that only made Mitchell angrier. He squeezed her wrists even tighter and shouted, "How long will you keep reminding me of the past?" The girl didn't want him to remember that past, but because of that same past, every time his voice rose, she would freeze in horror. Her body was shaking, her heart was racing, and tears welled up in her eyes. Mitchell gloated and asked, "Why are you crying?" At that moment, Boom Taha's voice echoed in her mind, the same voice that had given her courage for the first time. And with that same courage, she asked her husband about the lipstick mark on his shirt that she couldn't ignore. Mitchell hadn't expected the usually submissive Nahu to ask such a question, but he demanded an answer from her in a faltering voice. The boy smirked. He said that she was jealous, and that fact gave him a strange satisfaction. He said she was behaving like a psycho, making a scene at his workplace over something so trivial. Nahu was in shock. His words were incomprehensible to her. She didn't want their lives to come to this. Mitchell said maybe he had just bumped into someone, and then he said that Nahu disgusted him. He turned and walked away. The girl remained standing there, leaning against the wall. Her legs felt numb. All she felt was guilt. She wandered the streets as if in a daze. People's faces were blurred. She accidentally bumped into a passerby, but she didn't even look back. Suddenly, that same passerby bumped into a tall, strong man. The stranger angrily said that his shoulder was dislocated, as if he had bumped into a pole. "Watch where you're going." It was Boom Taiha. He was silently following Nahu, counting the distance between their steps. He didn't even realize that there were now only 10 steps between them. Boom Taiha looked at her sadly. He thought that by now, Nahu should have sensed his presence. It pained him to think that even if they were only 3 steps apart, she wouldn't notice him, because she didn't want to. Her entire attention was focused on her loser husband, and that's what stung Bomba to the core. Bom Taiha was pretending to be a good person. He was trying to be patient. But he wanted Nahu to see him, to turn and look at him, even if it was in anger. He even wanted her to turn around and scold him for his wicked intentions. He kept messaging her, even though she wasn't replying to any of them. He had warned her that it was going to snow today. He wanted her to be happy about the first snow. But Nahu was so exhausted that she couldn't even remember what happiness felt like. Slowly, they reached her house. Boom! Taiha took out his phone and typed the next message. It will rain after the snowfall. He hoped the sound of the phone would bring her back to reality. Nahu stood silently outside her house, head bowed. A few seconds later, the sky opened up and heavy rain began to fall. Nahu remained standing there. She didn't move, didn't say anything. The water streamed down her face, and the cold seeped into her body. But she just stared blankly into the distance. She was trying to understand what had happened today. What was she thinking when she ran to Michael's workplace? Did she really think he would listen? Would he understand? Would he change? The girl slowly doubled over and sat down. She rested her head on her knees and began to sob uncontrollably, as if the sound of the rain would hide her pain. Bomba stood in the corner. His heart ached with pain. He thought, by now, she should have understood what kind of person her husband was. He dropped the umbrella and let the rain wash over his face. He wanted to bear the pain that Nahu was feeling. Inside, he had reached his limit. He remembered. Nahu had once helped him, supported him, told him that he was a good person and that everything would be all right. But she was wrong. He wasn't a good person. He was a fool, who kept thinking that his unhealthy relationship would end on its own. In reality, he was willing to do anything for her, even if it was wrong. And that night, he let her cry for the last time. The next morning, Nahu came to work. Her eyes were swollen. Her friend asked anxiously, "Are you okay?" Nahu gave a slight smile and said, "I just ate too much ramen last night."
Her eyes were swollen. Her friend asked worriedly, "Are you okay?" Nahu said in a weak voice, "I just ate a little too much ramen last night." There were still 10 minutes before work started. Cheju quietly said that she was going out for a little while. But Nahu's mind was elsewhere. Mule hadn't come home last night. She had stayed up all night, crying and waiting for him. Only one thought was swirling in her mind: their wedding anniversary was coming up. She wanted them to go to a restaurant together. Maybe that would make everything all right. She was lost in thought when suddenly something warm touched her cheek. A soft voice came close to her ear. "You're slacking off." Nahu looked up. Bom Taiha was standing in front of her. Nahisu just stared at him for a moment. There was a hint of fatigue in her eyes, but there was such innocence on the young man's face that she couldn't help herself. Bom Taiha had noticed her swollen eyes. He lightly teased her, saying that she coffee, and quietly said thank you. She was surprised that he had come here, even after she hadn't replied to his text. She asked with a half smile, "Are you going to scold me?" "Because I came to you." A slight warmth spread through Nahu's heart. She felt as if someone was gently touching her broken pieces. She said that she wouldn't scold him. Hesitantly, she asked, "Do you like things like that?" Bom Taiha asked, confused. "What are you talking about?" Nahu said shyly, "I mean, do you like being scolded?" Bom Taiha burst out laughing at her words. He covered his face with his hands, as if trying to compose himself. Nahu said with a cute pout. Don't laugh at me. He looked at her slowly, his gaze a little heavy, a little languid, but strangely captivating. His voice was deep. Actually, I don't like things like that. But if it's anything from Nahu, I don't have a problem. Nahu's face flushed slightly. His eyes seemed to be reading her. Nahu thought to herself that he must be joking again. Bom Tai-ha said that from now on, he would come to her without warning. The girl said softly that she didn't mind. But don't come looking for her on Friday. The boy asked why. Nahu explained that it was her wedding anniversary, and she would be spending time with her husband. She felt a little empty saying that. The boy was silent for a moment. Then a hint of sadness appeared in his eyes. He said he didn't know. Nahu apologized. She thought he would have guessed that she was married. Bom Tai-ha thought to himself that he wished he could tell her that he knew her whole life, including the fact that she was now divorced. He took a strand of her hair between his fingers and simply said, I'm a little confused. If it were me, I would probably hate all of this. His voice was low, but so deep that Nahu's breath hitched. He leaned closer, his gaze fixed on Nahu's face. He asked, Isn't your husband jealous of you? Nahu was slightly shaken inside, but remained calm outwardly. She said that friendship also exists between a boy and a girl. Bom Tai-ha looked at her and thought to himself how naive she was. Even when her husband spends nights with a young mistress, she's still so kind. The boy smiled and said, Okay, I won't bother you. He wished her a good day and a good time with her husband. As he left, he cast one last glance at her. Nahu kept watching him. She was a little shy, a little confused, wondering if she had offended him. She liked being with him, but her conscience wouldn't let her cross any boundaries. Mitchell stayed at Ari's house again that night. Meanwhile, Nahu sat quietly on the edge of the bed, recalling her last conversation with her friend. The girls were sitting together at the cafe. Ari was happily telling her friend how handsome Mitchell was. She was very happy in her relationship and was laughing as she said that even though he was around 30, they still spent a lot of time together. Suddenly, one of her friends asked a question. Isn't it strange that despite all his good qualities, he's still not married? Hearing this, a slight unease crossed Ari's face. She looked at Mitchell and said that she really wanted to go to his house now. Mitchell tried to change the subject. He said that his house was much better than Ari's. He was thinking to himself how lucky Ari was to live in a new and beautiful house, so close to her job. He wished he could have a house like that too. Then a bitter thought crossed his mind. Even if he left Nahu and went to Ari, Nahu would remain in that same old house and would always wait for him, because she loved him. But he wasn't sure if he truly loved Nahu either. Mitchell thought about how cold and emotionless Nahu was, like a doll. She didn't have the warmth of a real woman inside her. During this time, Ari's annoyance grew. Mitchell suddenly leaned towards her and kissed her, as if he wanted to escape his inner turmoil. He admitted that he lived in a shabby apartment, with the same relative that Ari had already met. He confessed that he came from a poor family and didn't have much education. He was afraid that if Ari saw his real home, she might leave him. Ari hugged him tightly without thinking. She said that none of these things mattered to her. She accepted him just the way he was. There were tears in her eyes, because for the first time, Mitchell had opened up to her about his fears and his truth. Mitchell gently invited her to his house. Early in the morning, Nahu was making breakfast as usual. Suddenly, Mitchell came home. She was surprised, because he never woke up so early. Mitchell said that he had a lot of work to do that day. Nahu asked if he would be late that day. Mitchell replied that he didn't know yet. She didn't want him to think that she had forgotten their anniversary. Nahu had taken the evening off from work that day. She thought she would tell Mitchell later that she was free, and they could spend time together. She worked diligently all day. As soon as she left the office, she was thinking about how happy Mitchell would be to know that she had cleared her evening. Just then, a message from Mitchell arrived on her phone. He wrote that he would be working all night, and since Nahu also worked at night, it wouldn't be a problem for her. Clearly, he had forgotten. Nahu replied that she was also going to work. She was standing in the middle of the road, and suddenly, a strange pang shot through her heart, as if something had broken inside her. The girl stood in the middle of the road, thinking how foolish she was. Once again, her hopes had betrayed her. Finally, Jaisu decided that she would actually go to work. At that moment, a man was silently watching her from the corner. Meanwhile, Mitchell was walking towards his house with Ari in his arms. Ari's face was glowing, as if everything was going according to her wishes. She was now completely convinced that if Mitchell was taking her to his house, their relationship had become serious. Mitchell warned her that she might not like his house. But Ari smiled and said that it didn't matter to her, as long as he was with her. She held his hand and moved even closer to him. She softly said that she could do anything for him. They slowly walked towards the house. Mitchell was melted by her words. He said that he would also do anything for her, because she was extremely precious to him. Ari's smile widened. She felt that perhaps everything would be all right now. They were so lost in each other that they didn't realize that Bimaha was watching them. He thought that if Nahu also stayed with him, everything would be perfect. He immediately called his driver and told him to come and pick him up quickly. He had to change his clothes because it was now time to truly begin his plan. A deep, cunning expression appeared on Bomtaiha's face. Mitchell brought Ari to his and Nahu's apartment. He was a little hesitant, so he had already told her not to overreact. As soon as she entered, Ari was surprised. She said that it was very clean and cozy. She also praised Mitchell, but a strange sense of shame arose within Mitchell, because all of this was Nahu's hard work. The living room was quite cold. Ari's hands began to tremble, so Mitchell suggested they go to the bedroom, otherwise she would get sick. Ari gripped his hand tightly and whispered that he could keep her warm. Hearing her words, Mitchell's heart faltered. He pressed her against the door and leaned down to kiss her lips. But at that moment, he remembered Nahu. Those cold nights, when she would shiver in the middle of the night, but she never asked him to keep her warm like this. Every time he tried to get closer, Nahu would pull away. Gradually, he lost the desire to care for her. And today was their anniversary. He hadn't even remembered. Meanwhile, Bomtaiha had arrived home. He was changing his clothes. His body was strong, muscles bulging on his back. He had to carry out his plan today, so he was fully prepared. A little later, the bell rang in his shop. A tall and handsome boy came in. Bomtaiha picked up a basket and started selecting items. The girl was looking at him strangely, unable to understand why he was taking so many warming packs. Bomtaiha thanked her with a smile and left happily. Late at night, a woman was taking a smoke break behind the restaurant. Suddenly, a strange boy, breathless, came up to her and said, "Can you call Nahu?" The woman ran inside in a panic and told Nahu that someone was calling her from outside. Nahu wondered who it could be, so late at night. A glimmer of hope arose in her heart that it might be Mitchell. She hurried towards the back door, thinking that perhaps her husband hadn't forgotten their anniversary. But when she got outside, she called out, "Mitchell!" The courtyard was empty. She wondered if her colleague was playing a prank on her. Suddenly, someone grabbed her tightly from behind. Strong arms held her as if she were something precious. It was Bomtaiha. His face was very close to Nahu's. Nahu felt his warm breath on her face. "Nuna." he said softly. Nahu said, embarrassed. Call me Ajuma. Otherwise people will misunderstand. She smiled slightly. But I'll definitely scold you next time. The boy smiled and continued to hold her. He liked her gentleness and warmth. Nahu turned to him and asked, Did you hurt yourself? She moved closer and slipped her hand under his hood, touching his face. Her fingers were very soft, and there was concern in her eyes. Bom Taiha's heart pounded. He could feel her breath close to him. He leaned in a little more. This closeness thrilled him, but he knew he had to be patient. Nahu suddenly realized he had a fever. She was frightened. Bom Taiha said that he didn't want to bother her, but he had nowhere else to go. Nahu said that he should go home and get treated. The boy innocently said that he couldn't go home. Nahu remembered that he had mentioned before that there were problems at his house, always injuries and bruises. She sat him down and said, Wait, I'll be right back. Bom Taiha didn't want to let go of her hand. His eyes were full of hope. Nahu said in a soft voice, I won't leave you. I'll just ask the boss for a little time off. He calmed down and smiled, saying, Okay, I'll wait for you.